All right, thank you, Lori. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to call my mom. Really good job of having us peek into our creative identities as AI visionaries. Our next speaker is Patrick McDaniel, the teaching professor of computer sciences here at the University of Wisconsin. Patrick is the director of the NSF Frontier Center for Trustworthy Machine Learning and also served as the program manager and lead scientist for the Army's Research Laboratory Cybersecurity Collaborative Research Alliance from 2013 to 2018. Patrick's research focuses on a wide range of topics in computer and network security and technical public policy. Prior to joining Wisconsin in 2022, he was the William S. Weiss Professor of Information and Communication Technology, as well as the director at the Institute for Networking and Social Security Research at Pennsylvania State University. Let's give a warm welcome to Patrick.
So thank you for that warm introduction, and thank you for the invitation to come speak here tonight. So I'm a security guy, so it's my job to scare the hell out of you. But what I want to do is I want to pull you inside AI, and I want to talk about some very existential questions we have to ask ourselves as scientists, as human beings, about how we're going to absorb AI. I would argue that there are many students here in the room today. Much of your adult life will be you'll be experiencing the absorption of AI. The way we live our lives is going to change fundamentally. And this is going to mean social disruption. Now, this is not the sort of disruption you see a lot in things like Silicon Valley. This is disruption of the human experience. So there's a study in 2019 that explored how AI is going to affect simple employment. It was focused here in the United States, and they concluded something like 25% of the jobs in the United States will disappear in the next 10 years. Not because of any economic failure, simply because humans will not be needed for many different endeavors that we do today, including some here in the university. Some parts of education will change. For example, tutors in the future, AI tutors, may be better than human beings because they can learn with you, they can give you their full experience, they can work with you as long as you want to work with them. They're not limited by exhaustion. And so they may be a better teacher than many of the teachers that you have here. And so that's going to change education. But the same is true of engineering. It's going to change art. It's going to change the way we conduct our social lives. And so with this is enormous change in the way we structure society, in the way we structure the economy. And so we have to ask an interesting question, is what is this going to mean in terms of dangers? So I'm a security guy, as I said, and what I do is I study technology. And what I do is I always ask the same question as I approach a new technology. And there are really two parts to it. The first question is, can technology be used by an adversary? And second, can the adversary abuse the technology? And let me unpack that for you. That is, will AI be used to harm other human beings? And I think the answer is pretty resoundingly yes. And then, will we be able to exploit AI, or will AI be exploitable such that our adversaries, people that are seeking us ill, can harm us? And I think wherever we go with this disruption in our society, every time there's an economic force or a change in the way we conduct a particular industry, we have to keep asking these questions. And so what I want to do tonight is I want to begin to ask you to start asking those questions, because you are, the next generation, are going to decide how we as a species are going to absorb AI. How we handle this transition to a new reality is going to really shape the experience of you and your children and generations to come. And if we do it well, AI will simply do things like reduce disease and perhaps cure ignorance. famine. There's enormous value in AI. But unless we handle this well, we're going to end up with some negative consequences. So the first question, and this is where I want to play a game with you, is what is AI? So there's a lot of confusion about this, and there's a lot of hype around this. If you're familiar with the term, the hype curve, we're pretty much near the top of the hype curve. What I want to bring you into is that world, because only in the context of understanding what AI is can you really make a valid assessment of what its dangers are. And so I want to do an experiment. But first, we have to remember something about AI. AI, by itself, it has no intrinsic value. In and upon itself, AI is just an algorithm. It's just data. It's just a computer program with an output. It's only when it's used within some particular context does it have any value. And so one of the most obvious examples is something like an autonomous vehicle. Just like Sharon showed a little while ago, we saw the autonomous vehicle is going down the street and it's making some decisions based on what it's observing in the environment. And that AI is the thing that's doing something like recognizing what is a stop sign. And this is where technology has really become magic. It's doing things we didn't think were possible even 5 and 10 years ago. But what is it really doing? And so what we're going to do is we're going to play a game. We're going to do what the internet does best. Kittens and puppies. All right, so now you're my AI. I want you all to forget everything you know about kittens and puppies. Just blank your mind, okay? And I'm going to show you some pictures. And I'm going to say the one on the top right, on the diagonal, and the two on the right are dogs, and all the rest are cats. Everybody with me so far? Now, here's the important part. This is all you know about kittens and puppies. This is all the information you have in the universe, okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to do what's called generalize from this. And this is where AI is magic. What AI is doing, it's taking lots and lots of data, like lots of pictures, and generalizing from it. And so what it's going to do, it's going to look at something called features. And these features are things that are aspects of the phenomenon. For example, in this case, you could say, we're going to look at ears and tails. And if the ears are pointy, it's more cat-like. And if they're floppy, they're more dog-like. If the tails are shorter, they're more dog and cat, and you get it, right? So now this is where AI starts to behave. Now, you take your training data, and I give you this picture. What is it? Well, right, it's a cat, because it's got pointy ears and a long tail. Welcome to AI. That's it. We just generalized from the data. Now, Sharon's going to love this one. What do we do now? Right, what do we do with this data? This is out of distribution. Is that a cat or a dog? Which is it? It's a cat. Why? Because it's got 8 tails. Right? Okay, so that's the important part, right? So you don't know. You're AI. You can't tell the difference. You don't know it's out of distribution, as Sharon pointed out, right? But you generalize anyway. But there are other issues here. So if we take a look up at the top right-hand side, we see this thing on the top right. Anybody know what that is? Why is it a cat? Because it's white. Right? Anybody heard of bias? Right? Just like we have bias in reality, AI gets biased by the data. If you tell AI all cats are white, it will learn cats are white, even if that's not a true fact. That's called false learning. Now you've demonstrated one of the great special things that you've done. You have demonstrated pattern recognition. Now I want you to exercise the second thing that makes us so effective as a species, and that's called filtering. What's the bottom one? I will tell you it's a dog. Can anybody guess why? See, your brain made you do something. You're not even aware of it. Why is that a dog? Anybody guess? Because of the green. See, all in our training data, the only places you see green were dogs. But it wasn't the dog. AI has no idea what's dog and not dog and what's cat and not cat. It was the environment in which that training data was pulled from. It's another example of false learning. Your brains filtered out the grass. And that's why we're so effective. That's why we're intelligent. We're really good at pattern recognition and filtering just for special reasons. But AI isn't. And this leads to some interesting problems. There's other parts, in fact, we just had a really interesting talk about this, generative AI. There are other ways to use these generalizations to create new artifacts. These three people, and I encourage you to go to this website because it will keep you up at night. It's called thispersondoesnotexist.com, right? It sounds spammy, but it's actually NVIDIA's behind it who make the graphics cards. Those people never existed. These were generated human beings. You can actually enter ages and characteristics of a person. You can generate people. If I showed you these pictures before this talk began, and I said, is this person a real person? With 100%, you'd say yes, wouldn't you? Right? And we can do this for all sorts of things, like audio. This is text. These are reviews from Yelp. This is called synthetic reality. And while it has tremendous positive advantages, there are other things that we need to worry about, is perhaps that has some negative consequences. All right, how many people went to kindergarten? That's good, that's very encouraging. All right, so on the right, what's the right-hand side? It's a stop sign. What's on the left? No, it's a yield sign. So now this is one of the eccentricities. Now this is actually, there's a whole field of something called adversarial machine learning, which I've been active in, where we actually take AI and we take some artifact that we're going to give that AI, but we change it just enough in an adversarial way to make the AI think it's something that it's not. It's called a misclassification. And if you were to look really, really closely, you might see there might be a little bit more yellow. But as it turns out, AI is really good at making decisions or making about things that are very close to our distribution. But it's really, really bad at anything that's not like the training data. And it's like our octopus. It doesn't know. And in fact, Sharon has been one of the pioneers of developing algorithms how to detect when something is out of distribution. But this remains, as a general proposition, a very hard challenge. So what do we do? So what are the ways, and you know, I could go on for some time, about all the ways you can attack AI, but let's just think about this logically, okay? So we know where AI is basically generalizing some data. What are the ways we can actually attack it? Well, we talked about adversarial inputs. Because that set of data that we're using to train is actually infinitesimally small with respect to the actual phenomenon, adversarial inputs actually exist, and you can create them. So if you have an adversary that can control what your AI is receiving, you've got a real security problem, because basically at this point, any AI, if I can control the inputs to an AI, I can make it do anything I want. Other things are like poisoning the training. Right? What if I inserted bias? What if I took a whole bunch of pictures of dogs, labeled them as cats, but put a little yellow flower in the bottom right-hand side? That would create a trap door in the model. Any image with that little yellow flower on it would instantly be a cat, right? So you can actually poison the training data to get phenomenon, to create the instances where it's wrong. And you can do it in such a way that no one knows that the model is actually broken until it's exploited. But there are other problems. For example, one of the things that is one of the realities is that when you talk to a model, it gives you some information. And in fact, you can learn about the training data. And in some instances, there are things you can actually learn the actual training data. Simply by talking to AI, this creates a real problem. If your AI is leaking the training data, this is going to introduce a whole bunch of problems. I speak to people on Wall Street pretty regularly, and basically, if high-speed traders start using AI in the incorrect way, and I know they're doing it, I can use this information to figure out what their strategies are, and I can put them out of business in 6 seconds. There are other problems, like what if your medical data is being used to train medical models? Does that suddenly become public data? Do you know what your exposure is? There's huge privacy. And then, of course, like if you're building a business based on AI and you're using all your training data and all your engineering, and then you put it on the internet and somebody can learn about your model, they can basically just steal your AI by talking to it. But in the last few minutes, I really want to talk about society, but I want to back up and I want to start talking about economic theory, because this is really where I think one of the big existential questions in our society comes from. So there's this guy, Charles Goodhart, and it's called Goodhart's law, and he basically said when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So let me give you an example of what he's talking about. So about 40 years ago, we adopted here in the United States and in other parts of the world that miles per gallon was the measure for how much environmental impact a particular car had. And the moment that the entire industry said, that's the only thing that matters for environmental impact, it absolutely ignored all of the other environmental impacts of cars. Heavy metals, tires are terrible for the environment. But yet, when you look at that MPG, that's just sufficient as a measure of environmental impact. So the use of MPG as a measure basically undermined the problem of environmental impact of cars. Now, here's my corollary. My corollary is that AI is going to create something very similar. So let's pick on Harvard, because why not? So Harvard has some big problems with admissions. And I actually had one of their administrators ask me, how should we use AI to make our decisions on who gets into Harvard? And I said, absolutely not. And the reason is that the moment you use AI for an important societal decision, it becomes the target. So people who want to get into Harvard will figure out how to make the model happy. And I'll take it one step further. Right? They'll figure out what particular things makes you more of a Harvard student. And I will argue that the number one characteristic will be something like varsity tennis. And the reason it'll be varsity tennis because it's Northeast, it's white, and it's wealthy. And people will make decisions based on AI will be based on things that were part of the equation of that data. So if we introduce AI into things like deciding things like who gets a loan, you will reintroduce all of the long-term sociological effects we've had in things like the allocation of wealth in this country. Any data you use will carry the same biases that it had beforehand. But I want to get to this person does not exist, because I think this is a really important question. So we have reached a point in AI where we are creating artifacts that are simply indistinguishable from reality. And this concerns me. I have two kids. One, my youngest son just went off to the University of Minnesota. I'm sorry. They got through high school. It's a shark tank. It's an absolute no reason to ever go back to high school. But I saw how they treated each other. And I saw the kinds of sort of pre-consequence behavior. And it's been thus for all time. But what concerned me was how AI is going to play into this. So let's take for example, something that I actually saw. 13-year-old girl, bad home situation, mental health problems, gets into a mean girl situation. And she is on social media, and one of the people in her high school downloads a program and it attaches to social media, creates content, befriends her, creates images and videos of her, it harasses her, and she kills herself. Remember, this program is attached to her, has no conscience, never stops, never sleeps. And I can create 1 billion of them in 10 seconds. What is it going to be like in our world where objective reality, particularly as it applies to human contact, is in peril? What do we do as a species, as a country, as a planet, where our technology has the ability to create realities that don't exist, and they can be used against us. And so what I believe we have to do is take a moment. We have to make some decisions about what we, as, I'll come back to species, want out of AI. And I said this at the outset, you as the cognoscenti, the next generation, you have to make some hard decisions. Because there will be economic forces that will want to take these kinds of risks. There'll be advantages of AI that'll be so tantalizing. But unless we have informed decisions about what our norms are, what our laws are, what our regulations are, and who's responsible for AI, I believe we're going to have a bleak introduction to AI. So thank you.